The purpose of this slideshow is to present future directions and options for the Seton Valley Volunteer Fire Department. This presentation was delivered on June the 11th in Seton Portage, and based on feedback received at that public meeting, the SLRD is providing another option for residents who were unable to attend to make their feelings on this important issue known. The Regional District's mission is to enhance the quality of life of constituents through the facilitation of regional and community services for the benefit of present and future generations. Seton Portage and the Seton Valley Fire Department fall within the SLRD Electoral Area B. The director of Electoral Area B is Mickey Macri, with his alternate being Dennis DeYager, and they represent the communities of Pavilion Lake, Texas Creek, the Alicum Valley, Seton Portage, and Fountain Valley. The SLRD provides funding to services through individual service or cost centers. Each service is accounted for separately using a dedicated fund, meaning that the SLRD does not have the same flexibility with moving money between services that a municipality would. Because of this, each service, including the service which pays for the Seton Valley Volunteer Fire Department, must identify its own revenues, with costs to be shared between the members that receive the benefit from that service. In this case, those are the residents of Seton Portage within the fire service area. There are restrictions on annual tax increases, and operating deficits are not allowed within a service. If there is a deficiency, that's carried forward as an expense to the following year, and it takes away from the money available for the service to operate for that year. The fire service in Seton Portage was established in 1992 by SLRD 480. It is a volunteer service operated by the Seton Valley Volunteer Fighter Society, and all equipment and apparatus are owned by the society, while the fire hall is owned by the regional district. This is a map of the fire service area for Seton Portage. Seton Valley Volunteer Department covers an area of, several square kilometers, and handles approximately 0 to 6 calls per year, including assistance with search and rescue when requested. Current chief is Frank Richings. There are 8 members, with at least 4 available to respond at any given time. Weekly training sessions with emphasis on primary apparatus and equipment maintenance, and most members are trained to the S100 basic wildfire protection level. There are 2 protection vehicles for the Seton Valley Department. One is a 1978 Dodge 1-ton mini pumper. The other is a 1955 GMC 6-wheel 2.5-ton tanker. And the department has access to a BC Hydro pumper stored at an alternate location on the Hydro site. Back in 2013, the SLRD conducted a fire service review. This was a chance to look at all of the fire departments within the regional district based on upcoming changes to the Provincial Fire Safety Act and the minimum standards training and operating playbook put out by the Office of the Fire Commissioner. A number of required improvements were updated or were indicated for all SLRD fire departments, including Seton. From August 2014 to August 2015, the SLRD contracted with a fire service consultant to begin laying the groundwork for these improvements. That consultant was Darren Oike, who is the current fire chief for Lillooet and has a long and distinguished history with fire services. An action plan was created based on the requirements or immediate priorities for each fire department. In addition to the preceding, the Fire Service Review also provided research on fire service provision models in other BC regional districts, including bylaws, policies, and procedures, etc. Looked at the purchase of replacement fire apparatus, and addressed interim agreements as well as declarations of service level for each volunteer fire department. Through the work that Darren Oike did as our consultant, the SLRD has purchased an FDM records management system that allows volunteer fire departments to improve their record keeping in a digital format. In addition, all fire departments share the cost of a training system, which is available to all the chiefs. and covered off occupational health and safety requirements with all the volunteer fire departments, including assisting them with forming OH&S committees, etc. For the Seton Valley Volunteer Fire Department, the immediate priorities identified in the Fire Service Review were an operating agreement with the SLRD. Currently, the Seton Valley Department provides service on behalf of the SLRD, but without a formal agreement in place. Pursue a cooperation agreement with BC Hydro for the use of the pumper, or transfer ownership of the pumper from BC Hydro to the Volunteer Fire Department. Acquire liability insurance. This has been done. Establish a safety committee, and that's to meet the requirements of the workers or WorkSafe BC. Initiate annual pump, hose, and ladder inspections. Decline to respond outside of the protection area without specific agreements and SLRD authority. This is an instruction that's been given to all the fire departments, and this is because if a fire department responds outside of its area, its workers' compensation coverage as well as insurance liability are void. Initiate training of all firefighters to the BC Firefighter Certification Program. This is the minimum structural firefighting program that's required in BC, and develop a constitution or documented course of action with objectives to assist in fire department growth and direction, and this work has been started. Third priority recommendations for the VFD are installation of vehicle exhaust ventilation in both truck bays. I believe there's one now. Enroll current active members in WMIS training, and distancing the relationship between the fire chief and the society treasurer. I believe that role is currently filled by the fire chief. There were several options identified within the Fire Service Review for fire protection in the Seton Valley. One of those, the first of those, was to remain an FUS compliant department. FUS stands for Fire Underwriter Survey, and I'll explore what that is and what it does at length in this presentation. Option 2 was consider a combined fire service with Shalath. Option 3 was to become a fire brigade. This would be no insurance benefit to residents, meaning that insurance costs would likely remain the same or go up, but this service would provide life safety and structural protection within the community. And option 4, and individuals shouldn't be alarmed when they see this option, as it was given to all of the fire services, is cease to operate the service. So FUS, or Fire Underwriter Survey. The FUS is the insurance body in Canada which assesses communities against 2 classifications, the first being a dwelling protection grade, which covers residential and will be the focus of this presentation, and fire protection classification, which looks at commercial buildings. Classification is used by insurers to help set or determine the amount that fire insurance will cost within any given community. The FUS is the only organization authorized to provide these ratings in Canada, and the gradings reflect a community's ability to handle fires in single-family dwellings. The criteria that we're looking at is called a DPG, or Dwelling Protection Grade. This is there are 5 grades from a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the best. DPGs 1 and 2, we'll look at them, but they don't really apply to rural departments. They're very difficult to achieve, and they refer more to urban departments with career firefighters and lots of equipment and lots of funding. Class 5 indicates that there is no fire protection or that it doesn't meet minimum criteria for insurance purposes. When a community improves its DPG, insurance rates may be reduced, though every insurance company uses its own criteria to assess the FUS DPG rating. The lower the DPG, the larger the discount given in fire insurance rates. And these are each of the dwelling protection grades. So if we look at 1 and 2, you can see that the requirements are quite extensive. In order to achieve this, it requires career firefighters to be on duty 24/7, and a water supply. And when we say water supply, we mean hydrant systems, etc., and limited to 8-kilometer response by road by standard pumper. Once again, these are for urban departments. When we get into DPGs 3 through 5, this is what's much more common to see in a rural area like Seton. 3A means that the area is considered to be protected. It does have an FUS compliant water supply, and there's a minimum of 15 volunteers available at any given time. 3B is considered semi-protected. Doesn't require a hydrant system, but does require a reliable water provision system, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that means in a minute. Again, the requirement is for 15 volunteers. For semi-protected, again, the hydrant system is not required, but a reliable way to provide water to firefighters is required. And there's, again, the 15 volunteers. 5 is considered to be unprotected or does not meet the DPG requirements to receive an insurance benefit. It's just a review on this slide of what some of the language means, what a standard pumper is, what a water tanker is and does. Indicates that a standpipe is not recognized as a fire hydrant as there's no design standard present for this. However, private water supplies such as those found on many farms may be recognized for fire insurance grading purposes if the owner-operator of that system can provide engineer's drawings and other documentation that indicate that it meets the availability requirements to FUS. Dwelling protection grade requires that firefighters live and work within a reasonable travel distance to the fire station to avoid undue delay when responding to fires. The distance from the fire hall to the extent of the fire service area should be no more than 8 kilometers, and that's based on the length of time it takes a fire department to respond and have a reasonable possibility of putting a fire out. The absolute minimum number of volunteers is considered within the fire insurance grading to be 10. And the maximum age of apparatus can be considered as 30 years old. However, most insurance companies will look at a standard that has 15 available firefighters and a maximum age for equipment of 20 years. In areas without hydrant systems, obviously firefighting is more of a challenge. A water supply that contains a draft pumper is required, and it has to be able to deliver water reliably 24/7, 365. Along with all the other criteria, in order to meet a dwelling protection grade, there has to be a fire hall site and fire hall, appropriate firefighting equipment, and emergency communication equipment. There needs to be capital reserves in place to take care of apparatus and equipment that is aging out, and all firefighters must have access to personal protective clothing. And this requires an annual operating budget for each department. So the DPG ratings are set by the Fire Underwriter Survey. Insurance companies use the DPG rating to determine the amount that they will charge in any given community for fire insurance. They're generally, when we're talking about insurance and volunteer fire departments, there needs to be a consideration of the cost that residents pay for insurance versus the cost of paying for a fire department. And ideally, the cost of the taxes that are paid would be offset by the reduction in insurance premiums. However, it's not generally the case that that happens. There is value to a fire department inherently in a community as it provides life safety and property protection, even though it does not necessarily provide a reduction in insurance premiums. When we talk about DPGs and the community ratings, we can see from this slide that 5 is considered unprotected, and therefore no discount on fire insurance is available to residents in that community. 4 and 3B are considered semi-protected, and residents in a 4 or 3B community can expect to receive a 60% plus or minus reduction from the unprotected rate. 3A, 2, and 1 are considered protected, and there is a possible 32% reduction from the semi-protected rate in communities with those ratings. So if we look at what's required for an FUS compliant volunteer fire department, and just a note here on the Seton Valley Volunteer Fire Department, it currently has an FUS rating. However, that rating is outdated. It was last assessed about 20 years ago, and now once FUS gets around to assessing Seton Valley Fire Department again, it'll be changed because the department is no longer FUS compliant. So if we look at the cost for bringing the capital budget required to bring the Seton Valley Department back up to an FUS compliant system, we're looking at about $475,000. This slide is a little busy, but it gives you an indication. Along the top, there's the current costs associated with the fire department, the costs associated with a fully functioning FUS compliant department, the cost for a fire brigade, which is an option that we'll discuss coming up here, and then a regional district fully compliant FUS department. And we look along the bottom there, and we can see that there is obviously an indication that some of these options are quite expensive. In addition to the cost for capital and operating budgets for a fire department, there are other challenges in a community like Seton. Having sufficient volunteers is probably the biggest hurdle with people that reside and work in the community. Again, with a limited tax base, FUS compliance can be quite expensive, and just a reminder that DPG 1 and 2 are essentially out of consideration for an area like the Seton Valley because of the cost and the requirement for career firefighters. Regional District Fire Service Administration is an option that the Regional District is exploring currently, and this would be an individual within the Regional District responsible for assisting volunteer fire chiefs with developing their departments along an action plan. It would involve all volunteer fire departments becoming SLRD operated departments. That means that there would be no departments operated through a contribution agreement anymore. The SLRD would be directly responsible for operation at each department. All chiefs would become paid employees of the SLRD. When we talk about chiefs becoming paid employees, each chief now receives a stipend or an honorarium for their volunteer service. That would simply be converted over into an annual salary. And again, those chiefs would be supported by a dedicated SLRD staff member who would support in administrative tasks like budgeting, scheduling, training, and equipment maintenance, etc. The society would serve as an advisory and support role to the volunteer fire departments. Currently, the SLRD has several departments that are operated directly by societies. This would shift the focus of societies over to supporting firefighters, fundraising for specific equipment, etc., with the operational responsibility going to the SLRD. The cost for a Regional District Fire Service Administrator would need to be shared by all of the departments within the Regional District. That's 6. The model to share those costs is still being determined. A new Regional District Fire Service Administration bylaw would be introduced to supersede all existing fire service bylaws, of which there is 6, and be updated to reflect new relationships and realities like service level declarations and meeting the provincial minimum standards. Regional District Fire Service Administration would facilitate sharing resources between each of the departments in the regional district and provide a coordination point for regional district-wide service growth and improvement. A Regional District Fire Service Administration offers a unified approach to fire service delivery, meaning that each of the departments would have the same or similar standard operating guidelines and procedures, and that if a firefighter were to move from one SLRD department to another, the way that things were done in the new department would be very similar to that person and very familiar. It would preserve operational autonomy for fire chiefs, and that's just a complicated way of saying that the fire chiefs in each of the departments would still be responsible for directing firefighting operations. The SLRD does not foresee a regional chief in this instance, and the support given through this mechanism would be rather than operational, it would be on administrative tasks. The structure would be able to assist departments with change at their own pace, meaning that the Regional Fire Service Administration would be able to work with the chiefs and meet the departments where they're at to help them pursue the end state which the communities have chosen for that department through financial and strategic support and guidance. All the assets of the fire departments would become SLRD responsibility, including apparatus and buildings, as well as any leases, etc. The SLRD would take responsibility for ensuring that reserves were set aside to replace equipment as needed, and things like that. A fire chiefs committee would be formed. In fact, has already been formed. They met initially in February of 2016 and will likely meet again in the fall of 2016. This is an opportunity for those volunteer chiefs to get together, discuss challenges that their services are facing, share best practices, ideas, and come up with strategies for making their systems more resilient. The Regional District Fire Service Administration offers an increase in sustainability through SLRD initiated mutual aid agreements with other communities, potentially the bulk purchase of consumables and equipment, sharing of training opportunities and resources, and the reallocation of equipment along a model to be defined. When we look at the reason for paid fire chiefs, essentially what this does is assist each of the departments and the regional district as a whole with saving some money and when it comes to liability protections for each of the departments. Currently, each department purchases its own WorkSafe BC coverage as well as liability insurance. Under a paid chief regional district fire service administration model, the chiefs would become SLRD employees and as such would be able to supervise their firefighters as direct volunteers of the SLRD rather than society volunteers, etc. Meaning that all of those folks could then be brought under the regional district's insurance indemnification and liability umbrella. And that the savings that could be realized from each department not having to pay for liability insurance, which in some services takes up the majority of the budget, could be directed towards the operational requirements of each department or for paying for the cost of the regional fire district or fire service administration. So when we look at the options that were identified for the Seton Valley Department, essentially we've come up with 4 options. And I'm going to review them on their own slides as followed, but this slide just summarizes what those options are. Once you've done reading the following 5 slides, please use the link provided with this presentation to complete the Seton Valley Fire Services Future Directions Survey. And once again, this is not the last opportunity that the community will have to provide input into this process. It's simply a mechanism that the regional district is using to narrow down the future directions so that we can start building out the specifics of what is most desired by the community. All of the options presented here will require changes to bylaw, and many of them will require a vote of the individuals who pay into the service, meaning those folks within the Seton Valley fire protection area. Option 1 is conversion of the current department into a Seton Valley Fire Brigade. They'd offer the same fire service area as the current outline. They would be operated by the society as a contribution service. Currently they operate on behalf of the SLRD, so there would be a change in bylaw where the SLRD would simply collect and disperse the annual tax requisition from residents, including some funding from rental revenue and BC Hydro payments in lieu of taxes. The service level for this department or brigade would be exterior only. However, residents of Seton Valley would see no reduction in their fire insurance rates. The annual cost per $100,000 of assessed home value would not be collected from residents, but would be funded through BC Hydro payments in lieu of taxes. Option 2 is a fully functioning FUS compliant regional district fire department. This would be operated by the regional district, providing exterior only structural firefighting. There would be a significant reduction in insurance rates for those within the 8 or potentially 13 kilometer radius based on negotiations with the Fire Underwriter Survey. The annual requisition required for this would be $144,845 approximately, meaning that for each $100,000 of assessed home value, residents would be paying $815. Option 3 is a fully functioning FUS compliant regional district fire department along with the regional district administration that was referred to previously in this presentation. This would be operated by the SLRD, and administrative services would be provided to assist the chief officer. Again, exterior only, but it would include a significant reduction in fire insurance rates for those within the 8 to 13 kilometer radius. The annual requisition would be $161,845 approximate, with an annual cost per $100,000 of assessed home value at $911. Both option 2 and 3 do seem very expensive, but I should mention at this point that the SLRD is working with BC Assessment to explore other options in the Seton Valley, which could significantly reduce the annual cost per $100,000 of assessed home value. Option 4, again, this option was provided to all fire departments within the review, is to cease operations. No fire protection would be provided, and residents would see no reduction in fire insurance rates. The annual requisition would, of course, be $0, with an annual cost per $100,000 of assessed home value at $0. If you have any questions, please contact me directly. My name is Ryan Wainwright. I'm the SLRD Emergency Program Manager and the Interim Fire Services Administrator. My email and phone number are on this slide. Please do take the time now to complete the survey, and thank you very much.